Literature-based curriculum, a book lover's dream. But I never really knew how much we would thoroughly enjoy and truly learn from just reading books until I used Sonlight. If you're new here, I'm Rian, a Christ-following wife and a homeschool mom to 3 boys. Here we talk all things homeschool, and we will learn together how to use our roles as wife, mom, teacher, and homemaker in order to glorify God. So you've decided on a literature-based approach, and you know that reading good books is so good for everyone involved, and you know all the pros of using a literature-based curriculum. But what do you choose? Here is why I love Sonlight personally, and maybe it will give you kind of the push you need to either try Sonlight for the first time or at least look more into it. Now I need to make a clarification. We only use the Sonlight core. We do not use their science or anything like that. We only use their core, which is history, Bible, and literature. So I just thought that would be helpful to know that. So my top 5 reasons for loving Sonlight are, it is not busy work. If you are not a worksheet-based person, which I won't lie, when I was in elementary school, I loved worksheets. I also loved reading. So I think I would have loved something like Sonlight. But busy work was kind of my jam. And I will never diss busy work completely because I think there's a time and a place for it. But I don't think giving a child curriculum full of busy work is necessarily the way to go. This is a rich and meaty core, and then you can add in supplements or busy work as you see fit. And I want to use busy work at my own discretion. I don't want my curriculum full of it. And that's what I love about it. It's straight and to the point, but so good. The second reason that I love Sonlight is that it spans a lot of grades. Now, I wouldn't say you could use this with a 9th grader and a kindergartner. You can't use the same core. However, there is something for a kindergartner and a 9th grader. But something I've heard people say is, how do you keep up with all those cores? It's just too much to give each kid their own core. And how do you keep up with all that? You don't do that. You lump your kids together the best you can. I right now have a 2nd and 4th grader, and they're doing the same core. And so if you look, they will give you a guide of the ranges that it works best for, but I've known many people who even go a little bit older or a little bit younger just so that they can teach their kids together. And they will all get something out of it. And I'll tell you, even though this is for my 2nd grader and my 4th grader, when it comes to some parts of it, my preschooler is even involved. He's only 3. And when we pull out those Usborne books and look at all the pictures of how the pyramids looked and stuff like that, he's right in there with us saying those words, saying the word pyramid, saying, you know, all these different words and pointing to the pictures. And he's getting something too, even though it is not for him at all. My third reason for loving Sonlight is that it takes you outside the box. It is not your typical history, Bible, and literature curriculum. It takes you to books that you may not choose to read on your own. And that means that sometimes you read books that you're like, oh wow, I did not like that. But I've never been mad that I read something from there. I've never been mad that I've exposed my children to one of the books from Sonlight. It's just like with anything, some are hits and some are misses, but it exposes you to a wide variety of literature so that you're not just kind of stuck reading the same stuff that you always tend to lean toward. The example that comes to mind is Year of the Baby. My kids never would have chosen that book, especially if you look at the cover. It has 2 or 3 girls on the cover with a baby. My boys wouldn't have picked that up. But because it was one of our read-alouds, we read it, and they actually really enjoyed it and found it to be very funny and heartwarming, and they were fully engaged in it. And that is never something they would have gotten from the library by themselves. And so you're not only going to read a wide variety of books, but there's also going to be books that are historical fiction. There's going to be books that aren't necessarily historical fiction, but are from a totally different culture than your own. And so you're learning lots and lots about that culture just by good literature, by good novels that are entertaining, but very different from the world that you may live in. And you read a lot of nonfiction as well, especially with the history portion. We just started reading George Mueller, and so we're learning all about his missionary work and how he came to be a Christian. And my kids are like, I can't believe that this guy started out like this and became a Christian, you know? And so seeing real people, seeing made up characters, but in cool environments and different cultures, and then seeing historical fiction where we're learning about these events. You know, we talked about Rome, and then we went and read Detectives in Togas, which even though it wasn't one of my favorites personally, they got to see Rome kind of in action in that book. The fourth thing that I love about Sonlight, which is maybe one of my favorite things about Sonlight, is that yes, it is God-centered. So yes, it is a Christian curriculum. And so they very much push a biblical worldview, which I love, which is what I want, because that's how I want my kids to see the world, is through the lens of Scripture. However, they expose you to other worldviews, which I think is so important. I think sometimes we want our kids to have a biblical worldview, which is, like I said, so important. But we forget that when we look at things from other lenses, it's not so that we can start believing those things or living like that person. It's so that we can understand how the world came to be what it is. So when we studied Rome and we learned about the different gods that they served and what they believed, theologically, it made a lot more sense why they made the decisions they did, why some countries were more warlike than others. And, there's just crazy things that if you only look through the lens of Scripture, you just look at other people and you're like, what is happening? Why would this civilization do that? Well, if you go back and think, well, they worshipped the moon, or they worshipped, whatever gods, it makes a lot more sense. So I love exposing my children to that, but saying this is not truth, but this is why things were the way they were. And I think that also tends to lead to understanding people better as a whole too. So if you know that someone has a certain heritage, you're going to have more compassion for the way they act or the way they believe than if you just never learned about that in the first place. And the fifth and final reason that I love Sonlight is that it's fun. My kids love, it is their favorite part of school. They ask to do Sonlight before anything else. And I typically give them something to do with their hands. I give them Play-Doh, I give them Legos, I give them drawing paper, whatever it may be for that day. And they sit there and play, and you're thinking, are they even listening? Because you can hear them rattling through the Legos and kind of want to pull my hair out. But I can go back and ask them those review questions, and they can answer them. And that's what I love about it. Yes, it is mostly just reading, but those review questions, you go through there and they can answer those questions, and you can know, oh wow, they actually were hearing me and understanding me. And then because it's not super rigid, you can pause and ask your own questions and start your own conversations. And it just gives you such good space and room to do that instead of just reading from a textbook. And then they love looking up. Most of the reading sections will have a timeline figure and or a map reference. So we go back to the beginning of the book where the maps are, and they can point to, I'll say, okay, find Greece, and they're finding Greece. So it's incorporating geography in there as well. And they love that part. They love to race one another to see who can find it first. So Sonlight, no busy work. You can teach multiple grades at once. And what I really love about that is not only does it save you time, but it's a bonding experience for our family. We're all learning the same things together at the same time, and that's really important to me. Number 3, it helps you to think outside the box and to read things that you may not have read on your own. Number 4, it is a biblical worldview, but it's not a sheltered worldview. It lets you know about other worldviews without saying that they're necessarily right. And then the 5th thing is Sonlight is fun. And I can attest to this because my boys love to do it. So if you're considering a literature-based curriculum, I highly recommend at least checking out Sonlight. Another thing that I hear a lot of is, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. Well, there's ways around that. You can find all of the books used. You can go check them out at the library even if you want and get them totally free. We typically buy our books used just because I think it's not only saving money, but it's just being a better steward. Why buy something printed new when it's already printed and no one's using it and you can just buy it there? But I can 100% say we will be using this next year, and unless it somehow stops working, we're going to continue to use it in the future. So let me know in the comments down below, have you ever tried Sonlight or any other literature-based curriculum, and what did you think about it? Please subscribe if you haven't already, and be on the lookout. My next video is going to be our year-end review, where I will tell you all about what worked this year and what didn't work and what we're going to do about that. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.